When Adrian Vale first arrived on Valaris Prime, he believed his assignment would last 3 months, involve mostly translation work, and end with him returning quietly to human territory. He was wrong about every part of it. Valaris Prime was the political heart of the Aurelian Star Dominion, a world covered in white crystal towers that rose above oceans of silver vegetation. From orbit, the planet looked like light had hardened into architecture. Every building reflected the sky in pale blue fragments, and even the roads appeared polished enough to mirror passing ships. Humans had only recently opened diplomatic relations with the Dominion, and because Adrian spoke 3 trade languages plus enough formal dialect to survive elite conversations, he had been assigned as a civilian cultural liaison to the royal palace. He expected paperwork. Instead, on his second day, he was standing beneath a vaulted chamber ceiling 40 meters high, while nobles watched him like he had wandered accidentally into sacred territory. The reason was simple. A human had never been invited into the private Eastern court before. And directly ahead of him, seated beside the throne but slightly lower, was the one person every whisper in the palace revolved around. Princess Saralith Avenor. She was younger than Adrian expected, perhaps close to his own age, though alien lifespans made guessing unreliable. Her silver-blue hair fell over one shoulder in carefully arranged strands threaded with luminous crystal rings. Her skin carried the faint pale tone common to Valerian nobility, almost reflective beneath the chamber light, and her eyes, large, violet, unnervingly clear, rarely stayed fixed on anyone for more than a second. He noticed something else immediately. She never fully raised her head. Every noble who approached spoke formally, but she answered softly, almost carefully, as if afraid to occupy too much sound in the room. Princess Saralith oversees cultural reception, one court official told Adrian quietly. You will present translated Earth archival records to her before tomorrow's council. Adrian bowed, because everyone else did. When he looked up, her gaze flickered toward him and vanished again. The court dismissed soon after, but one thing stayed with him as he left. Despite royal status, she looked deeply uncomfortable being observed. Over the next week, Adrian learned palace rhythm. Morning translation sessions. Afternoon ceremonial attendance. Evening archive review. And always, Princess Saralith somewhere nearby, speaking little, listening carefully, avoiding prolonged attention. The palace servants explained why in cautious fragments. She had been raised under extraordinary protocol. Future bloodline expectations. Court discipline. Public perfection. Every gesture analyzed. Every word judged. And because she was not yet queen, but nearest heir, every noble family measured her constantly. She dislikes grand court appearances, one archivist admitted. Too many eyes. Adrian understood that more than expected. He had grown up quiet too, though not royal. The first real conversation happened accidentally. Late one evening, he entered the Eastern Archive chamber carrying translation tablets and found Saralith alone, kneeling beside scattered crystal records. She startled, so suddenly one tablet slipped from her hand. Adrian caught it before it struck the floor. For a moment both froze. Then she spoke first. You move quietly. You looked busy. I was hiding. That answer surprised him enough to make him smile. From nobles. A faint expression touched her lips. From everyone. He handed her the tablet. You hide in archives often? Only when the court becomes loud. He noticed then that without ceremony around her, she seemed younger, less guarded. More real. The silence between them was comfortable enough that he stayed to help reorganize records. At one point she reached for a high shelf and nearly lost balance, stepping backward from a raised platform. Adrian instinctively steadied her arm. She looked startled again, but didn't move away immediately. Sorry, he said. You apologize often. Occupational habit. For humans. For people trying not to offend royalty. That earned something rare. A quiet laugh. He realized then he had not heard her laugh before. And it changed her entire face. The reserved expression softened, and for the first time he noticed how striking she truly was when not forcing stillness. The thought left his mouth before caution caught it. You should laugh more. You look beautiful when you do. The room became completely silent. Even the air seemed to stop. Saralith stared at him. Not offended. Not angry. Simply frozen. Color rose visibly beneath the pale silver of her cheeks, an unmistakable flush spreading upward. Her foot slipped on the polished platform. She almost fell backward. Adrian caught her again, both hands this time, preventing her from hitting the shelf behind her. For half a second they remained absurdly close. Her eyes widened. You. Then the archive door opened. 3 attendants entered.
Saw everything.
And stopped moving. Behind them, 2 palace guards also froze. The silence became catastrophic, because what they witnessed looked dangerously intimate. Human envoy holding the princess while her face burned crimson. One attendant nearly dropped a record case. Saralith stepped back so quickly she almost collided with the shelf again. I slipped, she said too quickly. Nobody answered. One guard stared directly ahead with heroic effort not to react. Adrian felt immediate political death approaching. I was catching a falling archive tablet, he offered weakly.
No one believed that.
By sunrise, the palace knew. Not the truth, something much larger. Rumors traveled faster than ships. The human had made the princess blush. The human had touched the princess. The princess had smiled. The princess had nearly fallen. By breakfast, servants avoided eye contact out of politeness, while clearly wanting details. By midday, nobles began studying Adrian as if he carried forbidden knowledge. He expected removal from court. Instead, he received summons. To the Western Garden. Private royal request. He arrived expecting reprimand. Instead, Saralith stood beside a reflective pool under silver trees, no attendants within hearing distance. She faced away when he approached. You caused disorder, she said softly. I noticed. They're discussing whether human customs are dangerous. That seems excessive. A pause. Then, no one has called me beautiful before. That caught him off guard. He blinked. What? She finally turned. In court they praise lineage, posture, ceremonial grace, diplomatic worth, blood purity. Her eyes lowered. Never beauty. Not honestly. Adrian frowned. That makes no sense. In this palace, she said, praise is usually strategic. He understood suddenly why the comment had hit like impact. Because it had not been strategic. Just honest. He chose his next words carefully. Well, then they're blind. Again that color returned instantly. And again she looked dangerously close to losing composure. You should not say things like that without warning. Is warning possible before honesty? Her laugh came again, quieter than wind through leaves. That laugh mattered more than he expected, because it sounded like someone finally breathing. Days passed and something changed. Saralith began requesting Adrian during archive reviews more often. Then during translation sessions. Then during public events under diplomatic justification. Nobles noticed. Court politics sharpened immediately. A human becoming comfortable near the heir unsettled many families who had spent years competing for influence. Especially Lord Valertesh, senior advisor and expert in elegant disapproval. He confronted Adrian openly after council. You should understand boundaries. I understand translation duties. You understand very little if you believe informal closeness carries no consequence. Adrian kept his tone neutral. The princess chooses her own conversations. Valer's expression tightened. Princesses rarely choose freely. That sentence stayed with Adrian. Because he suspected it was true. The turning point came during the annual Hall of Lights ceremony. 1,000 nobles gathered beneath suspended crystal lanterns while the royal family received formal allegiance. Humans had one small diplomatic section near the rear. Adrian intended invisibility. Instead, midway through ceremony, Saralith unexpectedly crossed half the chamber after formal greetings ended. Straight toward him. Every conversation died. Even musicians faltered. She stopped directly before him. The entire palace watched. You have not finished yesterday's Earth story, she said quietly. He stared.
Now.
You stopped before the ending. This was absurd, but refusing publicly would look worse. So he answered. It was just a story about ocean cities. I wish to hear the ending. He understood then. She was choosing public conversation deliberately. Against expectation. Against protocol. Against fear. So he gave her the ending of the story about old human coastal lights surviving storms. She listened like the hall no longer existed. When he finished, she smiled. A real one, not hidden. And the palace noticed because several nobles visibly lost composure. Then, in a voice clear enough for half the chamber, you were right.
About what?
Adrian asked. When I laugh, I feel less afraid. Absolute silence followed, because now everyone knew there had been earlier conversations. Personal ones. Unscripted ones. Lord Vaylor looked as though diplomacy itself had betrayed him. That night Adrian expected consequences again. Instead, he was summoned not by guards, but by the Queen herself. Queen Altherin Avenor waited in a private chamber lined with pale crystal walls. She studied him with unnerving calm. You unsettled my daughter. I apologize if she has spoken more this week than in months.
He stopped.
The Queen folded her hands. She fears judgment because this palace teaches judgment before kindness. No accusation followed, only observation. Then, you gave neither title nor strategy when speaking to her. No, Your Majesty. That is why she trusts you. He said nothing, because anything else felt dangerous. The Queen's gaze softened slightly. Be careful, Adrian Vale. Honest words carry weight here. Winter storms intensified over Valaris Prime, but inside the palace, something quieter continued. Seralith spoke more in council, interrupted nobles when necessary, laughed occasionally without covering it, walked through public chambers without lowering her head every second. Not transformed overnight, just gradually becoming visible. One evening in the archive, she admitted something he suspected already. When you first arrived, I thought humans were reckless. We are. I still think that. Fair. But perhaps recklessness and honesty are related. He smiled. Sometimes. She studied him for a long moment. Do humans always say what they see?
No.
Usually we complicate things badly. And that day you laughed and looked happy. She looked down, then back up. And beautiful? He nodded. Yes. This time she did not nearly fall. But the blush returned instantly. And both laughed because now neither feared the silence afterward. Months later, when Adrian's assignment officially ended, the palace no longer felt like the same place he had entered. The Eastern Court had changed because its quietest figure no longer vanished inside it. On departure morning, Seralith met him at the transport platform before sunrise. No attendants, no guards nearby, only pale morning light over crystal towers. You are returning to Earth? For now. For now, she repeated carefully, as if testing whether those words allowed return. He handed her a small human-bound book, translated coastal myths from Earth. For unfinished stories, he said. She accepted it gently, then looked at him with unusual steadiness. The first honest compliment I ever received caused diplomatic panic. He laughed. I noticed. It also changed something. What? She answered without hesitation now. It made the palace silent long enough for me to hear myself. For someone once unable to meet his eyes, the way she said it now mattered more than any ceremony. Transport engines began warming. He stepped backward toward the shuttle. Then she added, And Adrian? Yes. This time her smile arrived first. If you return to warn me before saying dangerous things. He grinned. No promises. As the shuttle lifted above Valaris Prime, Adrian looked down at crystal towers catching first sunlight. He had arrived expecting translation work. Instead, one honest sentence had somehow shifted an entire palace. And somewhere below, a princess who once hid in archives no longer lowered her head when rooms became quiet, because now she understood silence did not always mean judgment. Sometimes, it simply meant the world had paused long enough to hear truth.